a cabinet and the speakers in it are not just something where you just pick one and go with it. I mean, you can make anything work, of course. Like if you just buy a good cab and then that's your tone, and you can make it work, of course.
We have too many options now. You can move the microphone 2 centimeters and the sound will change.
Don't just default to whatever comes with your amp or digital amp or load box or whatever you have, but like choose the IRs intentionally. I'm just going to show you the drastic difference that you get by just choosing different cabs, and you can then make a decision for yourself.
So like, what would you say would be 3-4 standard setups in terms of cabs?
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go.
Guitar cabs matter more than amps. You've heard us say this on the podcast a couple of times, I think, in the past. When Malcolm and I did the podcast, we talked about this all the time. And today, I want to do an entire episode on this. So I want to actually prove that and show what's possible by simply choosing the right cabinet, speakers, and also microphone in a way, but most importantly, the cabinet. I want to show you what's possible by just simply doing that. Because people obsess over guitar amps and bass amps and all of that. And some collect, a variety of amps or virtual amps, plugins, whatever. But they only have or only use one cabinet, one type of speaker in a cabinet. And they will shoot out different amp models and their plugins and all of that, but they never really dig into all the cab options that they have, or they never try to use different IRs. And of course, that's not everyone. I know a lot of people out there are doing that, but I also know that many people are not. And I've been there. I always thought, like, for whatever reason, guitar amps and bass amps were super exciting, and cabs were kind of like a necessary thing that you needed, to move air. And it's like something you connect to the amazing amp you have. And in the past, actually, when I started my first band, I don't know, God, it's been 25 years or something crazy like that. I remember we were so excited that we saved up to buy this amazing amp and all that. And then we bought the cheapest possible cab just because we thought we need a cab, right? And that's what we did for a while. And I never really realized how important the cabinets are. And it kind of happened. The first time I realized it was when I was on stage with my band and there was a backline and different backlines in different venues, different countries, whatever, where we're playing. And I started to realize that every time I put my amp that I brought with me on top of a different cab, it sounded so different. And some of them were really terrible, others were great. And then I did some research, and it turns out that everyone who knows what they're doing are saying the same thing. The cab matters more than the amp, actually. And so, this is why we want to help you discover the power of choosing the right cab and the right mic and mic position for your song today. Whether this is a real amp or a virtual plug-in situation doesn't matter. And we'll do it by showing you a couple of audio examples and then also a few tools to make it happen, some of them completely free. So let's dive into this. My name is Benedikt. I'm a mixing engineer. I run a mixing studio called Outback Recordings, where we mix a lot of songs every year, hundreds of them. I've been a full-time producer before that, so I did everything, recording, production, mixing, all of that. Then I transitioned to mixing only. And I've been doing that whole thing for like 15 years or so at this point. And everything I've learned over the years from working with all these artists and labels from all over the world, all these lessons learned, you're going to find in this podcast. Like, this is why we built this platform. We are giving these insights to you so you can make better recordings from your jam spaces, from your home studios. You don't have to make the same mistakes that we made in the beginning. And so if you're looking to create stuff that you're truly proud of from your home studio, you're in the right place. If you're already a listener, welcome back. Very good to have you. Super excited to be doing this again today. This is episode 273, which is kind of insane too. And as always, I'm not doing this by myself. I'm here with my friend and co-host, amazing producer, mixer, engineer, songwriter, musician, and overall just, awesome dude and good looking. Manel Espinosa Berenguer from Spain. Hello, Manel.
Yeah, today I'm twice as happy because, with that compliment, like, what can I say?
I mean,
So,
yeah, look at you, man. Like that. Yeah. Somebody needs to
fucking
say
my
it.
mustache.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, just in case you don't know me, I'm Manel Espinosa, and I'm a music producer and mixing engineer from Spain. Happy as always to work with artists and try to bring their songs to a new level.
Yeah. Which you do. Yeah. So, let's dive straight into this, Manel. I want to go straight to the topic today. And sometimes we do the banter at the beginning, but this time we're going to dive straight into this.
Okay.
Unless you have something that you absolutely wanted to share on the podcast.
No, I'll save it for next week.
Okay, that's great. If it's not urgent, let's do that. Great. Yeah, it's this weird thing where people are like, some people love the banter and others are like, get to the point. And this week we got some comments on YouTube again where someone said like, tighten it up and get to the point. And I don't know. I never have an answer to this. I just like to talk, to chat sometimes, and sometimes not so much because, we don't have that much time or a big episode prepared like today. So yeah, let's go into this. Let's start with some general information on cabs and speakers and the difference between them. And as always, Manel, I want to ask you, is this something that you experiment with a ton? Because every time I talk about these gear-specific things, your answer is almost always, well, like if I want a different tone, I just play differently, or I write a different song, or I pick a different guitar, and all these things. And I don't really care about the gear, which is awesome. I love that perspective. So I don't know. Is it the same answer today, or do you spend a lot of time choosing different cabs and IRs and all that?
Actually, after the episode about guitar tone, like a couple episodes ago, after that I was like, man, maybe I should try to experiment a little bit more because I've been using the same, modeling amps or digital amps, whatever you want to call it, for years. And, for example, I've never been a big fan of the orange sound, but I thought like maybe I should try it and see, whatever. But when I try to play with those kind of amps, I'm just, this is not me. Like, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But after that, I got back my HX Stomp, which was broken, and I got it back. And so I thought, yeah, let's make a new preset, with a different amp or whatever. And do you know what happened?
No.
Can you guess?
You suddenly loved an orange amp?
No.
No.
No, I tried a bunch of amps and a lot of cabs, different IRs and all that. I did it without looking at the names of the things.
And you ended up returning to the one you've already used?
Yes. So, yeah. But I mean, I'm not a big expert on those things. Like I can, hear different amps or different cabs and have an opinion on if I like them or not, but I cannot say like, yeah, this one probably has V30s or whatever, or I cannot really spot those differences. But
at least you've heard about these things. I mean, you said you liked or didn't like, the tone of orange amps, and then you mentioned V30s, which is already more than a lot of people. Most people don't even know what that is, basically. So,
the thing is,
yeah,
I have a 4x12 cab at my home in Alicante, and I don't even know what speakers does that thing have. I don't know.
Which cab is it?
I think it's a Crate.
Okay.
But I think it was modified at some point. Not by me, but when I bought it, it was already modified. I know that 2 of the speakers are V30s, but I don't know about the other 2.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So long story short, you have a taste, you know what you like. You can even, in a blind test, you end up using the same thing, basically. But it's not that you're... Like, I find it fascinating that you're not choosing different things for different scenarios, or probably you are doing that, but maybe not as much as I do in terms of like experimenting or like serving the song. Maybe it's also because, I don't know, when you play on your own music, you're using similar tones just because that's you and your style and your taste. Maybe, I don't know.
I think I tend to change other things before thinking about that, like changing the pickups on the guitar, or stuff like that before thinking about I'm gonna try to find a different cap.
Yeah. Well, that's true. It's also something you should do. It always starts at the source with the playing, then the guitar, the strings, the pickups, and all that, and then it gets to the rig and the amp, the cab, and all that. But yeah, let's stay with the topic of cabs today. So, some general info on cabs. A cabinet and the speakers in it are not just something where you just pick one and go with it. I mean, you can make anything work, of course. Like if you just buy a good cab and then that's your tone, and you can make it work, of course. But it doesn't mean that it's ideal for what you're going for. And especially if you're after a certain tone and you wonder how to make that happen, it is absolutely helpful to do some research and to figure out what people who are creating these tones typically use, because you will have a super hard time trying to get a similar tone with a completely different cab. And it's much easier to get close with a different amp but the same cab versus like having a different cab and having the same amp. So if you use whatever, like I always say, if you use two different modern high gain amps, and you have the same cab and you use one amp and then the other amp, there's a difference. But it's like subtle compared to when you have one amp but three different cabs. That's night and day. And so, for example, if you are after a modern, let's stick with this example, a modern heavy, kind of metal or hardcore, anything like that, like high gain tone. Chances are that you're going to like a Mesa 4x12 cab, because that is just what a lot of people use for good reason. It's a cab with like V30s in it, but it's not just the speakers, it's the cabinet itself and how it's built. So one of the probably most recorded cabs in this genre would be a Mesa 4x12. Sometimes the oversized, but just that. Then there are orange cabs with also V30s that are pretty popular. Sound completely different compared to the Mesa. I had both at my studio and completely different sound. Same speakers in there, but just how the cab is built, the whole approach behind it, the wood, everything is just different. And it sounds very, very different. Then there is the kind of the Marshall type cab with, again, different speakers in it. You can have like greenbacks, you can have whatever other speakers in there. And it's, again, built differently. And the classic, 1960 lead or whatever Marshall cabs, the one that I had, for example, was a lot brighter and had much more bite compared to both the Mesa and the Orange. And like, there's more nuance, but you get the idea. It's like very, very different types of cabs. And depending on the song that I was producing or recording for, I would pick the cab first. And it was very clear that I was going to use this or that cab. And sometimes it didn't matter as much which amp I'll be using, as long as I'm in the right amp category, sort of. And so just to give you an example of what a bad cab can actually do to your tone, with one of my bands not too long ago, not like my original band, 20 years ago, but the one that I was part of later, we were playing a couple shows. This was probably 7-8 years ago or so. And then it was just for a short while. But yeah, at one point we practiced for our shows, which we didn't do very often. And then we got into the jam space, and my guitar player, he plugged in his Marshall 800, JCM 800 into his cab. And I was like, you know what? I think your amp needs service. Like, it sounds like a kitchen radio. It's ridiculous. Like, this is not what this amp's supposed to sound like. And he's like, no, like, it's fine. It's been serviced. Like, that's what it sounds like. It always sounds like that. And I was like, that can't be the case. And he was using a 2x12 with V30s in it. And I didn't know which model it was because he had taken the brand thing off the front, so I had no idea. And then I said, like, can you just plug it into that other cab that we had at the jam space, just so I can be sure it's not the amp? And he plugged it into the other cab, and I don't even remember what it was, but something good. I think it was a Mesa cab. And I was like, oh, the amp is actually working. Like that's what an amp should sound like. And he was completely blown away because it was not even close, not remotely close. It was like his cab just sounded like a kitchen radio, super lo-fi, no depth to it, no lows, no sense of air being moved, no detail, very mid-rangey, very narrow. And then turns out that this was the exact cab that I hated so much whenever someone brought it on stage, like or when it was part of a backline. And every time that cab was there, I was like, oh no, like this is going to sound terrible. And it was exactly the cab that he got just because it was cheap. And so this is one example of where the cab completely ruined an otherwise really great amp. And some general info on cab, just so you know. The one, like size is one thing, like 4x12, 2x12, but both can work. And as long as it's a good cab, they're different, but both can work, definitely. There's 1x12 as well. Then another thing is, of course, the speakers in there, they make a big difference. So when you compare V30s with like two greenbacks or anything else, like that's a difference for sure. The type of wood, how thick and heavy it is, makes a difference. Then how it's like coupled to the floor. Different manufacturers have different approaches there. This makes a difference. And then probably one of the biggest ones is whether it's an open or closed cabinet, when the like open back or closed back cabinet. So if you have an open cabinet where if you look at the back of it, you see the speakers and it's not closed, happens often with combo amps and stuff like that also. When that's the case, then the speaker can move more freely because the air can escape the cab at the back. And so the speaker has a wide range that it can move without compression or distortion. And it's going to result in a certain tone that is pretty dynamic and open. Whereas a closed cab, because the air is locked in the cab basically, if you turn it up loud and the speaker starts to move a lot, there's like resistance in the back because it's not so easy to push the air out of the cab, and so the speaker starts to compress a little earlier and starts to give you additional speaker distortion earlier, and the whole thing just sounds different and it sounds slightly less dynamic, more compressed. It's just a completely different tone. So that's one thing again to be aware of, and the combination of all these things makes it so different. There's more factors to that, but it's very, very different between those cabs. Just to drive that point home one more time. So, do you have a preference, Manel, of like a certain type of? Do you even like know what you use when you use your Stomp or any amp sim or anything like that? Do you have a preference for a type of cab?
I know that most of the time the cabs are Marshall 4x12s. Not sure about the speakers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the one that I have, the real one,
Mm-hmm.
is, as I said, it's V30s and two others that I don't really know. But I have a question, like, what's the difference between 4x12 and 2x12 and 1x12?
Great question. We're going to do an entire episode on just speaker size at some point because it also matters when it comes to studio monitors. So one difference is like overall speaker surface. So if you have either a bigger speaker or many smaller speakers, the overall speaker surface that you have determines how low the cabinet can go in terms of frequency. So that's why if you have, like with bass cabs, you can have a 4x10 or you can have an 8x10. You can have a 115, whatever. And like, it doesn't really matter if you have like two 15-inch speakers or 8 10-inch speakers. If the surface overall is the same, both cabs can reproduce lower frequencies, pretty much the same. The overall speaker surface is what matters. That's also with studio monitors. You see, like mine, some have like two drivers that are 7-inch, for example, like mine, but they go really low. And then there's others where you have one 8-inch speaker that also goes low, but it's like different approaches. So yeah, the more speakers you have, the bigger the overall speaker surface is, the lower you can go in terms of frequency. That also means not just lower, but it means that if the speaker overall has more, can handle more power and has more speaker surface, you can reproduce lower frequencies at a higher volume, cleaner. So if you want to play a clean tone loud on a big stage without getting distortion, then a big amp with lots of headroom and a big cab will let you do that, because smaller cabs and smaller amps, if you have to turn them up loud, they start to compress and distort earlier. So if you want clean, loud, low end, bigger speakers are better, distortion free. Then the other thing is they are also louder. So this depends on a few other things too, but in general, you get more volume out of a 4x12. And then the sound is different also because of the cab itself, like how it's built, the volume of the cabinet, not the speakers, but the cabinet. It's like, how, and then when it's closed or open, especially with closed cabs, the wood and how much air there is in there, and also how it's built and all that, it's just more material, and it just sounds different. Like, to me, objectively, without considering the differences between different brands and all models and all of that, in general, I'd say bigger means bigger bottom end, like more low end and in a cleaner way. It means more volume. It means a little more headroom, so you can turn it up louder without it starting to compress. And smaller means a little more mid-rangey, starts to compress earlier. If you like the sound of speaker compression, for example, and then you might prefer a smaller cab because you don't have to turn it up as loud to get that kind of sound. Another thing to take into account is also the crosstalk between the speakers and where the speakers combine at a distance. So you have 2 speakers or 4 speakers, and the sound of each speaker will combine at some point if you go further away from the cab. And the total sound of the cab is the sum of all of this. If you stick a mic really close to one speaker, that effect is not as big. But if you record room mics, or if you play in front, like if you play and you stand in front of the cab, the way it sounds in the room is going to be a lot different whether you combine 2 speakers or 4, just because there will be cancellations, there will be stuff that adds up, and the spot where it all adds up is slightly different too. So yeah, there's a couple of differences. You got to hear it to make a good decision, but it is a difference. And a 4x12 of the same model and brand and same speakers will still not sound the same as a 2x12 of the same thing. It's like there's going to be a difference. And then live, it just helps also to hear yourself. Like, you can hear yourself more easily with a bigger speaker just because it's higher up usually, especially the angled ones. It's just, easier to hear that. With 2x12s, you often have to put them on top of something else. That's another factor. Yeah. For most heavy stuff or rock stuff or anything, I would prefer anything in that category of like heavier rock. I personally prefer 4x12s, although I really loved my orange 2x12 just because it had a certain sound that I just liked. So it's not a definite sort of answer, but when in doubt, I personally would go with 4x12s most of the time. For cleaner stuff, a 1x12 can be super awesome. For more precise transients and really clear, clean tones where it's about the clarity more than like the big low end and the size. If I were to record a really clear, punchy funk guitar, clean or whatever, a 1x12 can be absolutely amazing. Or like a combo with 2 12 inches or something in there. Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, when I was playing in a heavy metal band, the typical thing in the gigs where you play with 2 or 3 other bands was that one of the guitar players brings the cab and then everyone brings their own amp, right?
Yes, same here.
So, as you said, when that happens, sometimes the combination of those 2 things is really bad and it doesn't sound. So I just started to bring my cab every time, because the cab is something that normally people do not really want to bring because it's really big and to make it fit in your car and whatever. So at some point I was like, yeah, this is not going to happen to me again. So I'm going to bring it every time. And yeah, it works.
Yeah, definitely. It's the sound you know what to expect and all of that. So I totally get that. I would actually, if you can, I would actually recommend doing that. Sometimes it's just impossible with the changeover times, and all that. But the cab, like I said a dozen times now, the cab is very, very important. Okay, so now that you have some general sort of specs and info on cabs and things to think about and try, definitely when you go and buy a cab or when you pick IRs, try to audition them. Go to a store or something, plug into a couple of different cabs and figure out what you really like. It's a matter of personal taste also, a matter of genre, all those things. If you go for IRs, they're not super expensive anyways. But if there's a way for you to audition or try them or listen to some examples on YouTube or whatever, do that. Do some research and then pick those. Speaking of IRs, if you don't have a real amp and cab, or if you have a real amp but you use IRs instead of a real cab, IR stands for impulse response, by the way, which is a snapshot of a real recording chain, the cab, the mic, and everything afterwards. If you have that, please don't just default to whatever comes with your amp or digital amp or load box or whatever you have, but choose the IRs intentionally. It's worth it. And there's a reason for why people are selling these IR packs other than just making money, but they make a difference. And even if you have a really great amp sim that comes with a couple of cab choices, chances are that when you get the right IRs from someone who made really great IRs, because that's an art in and of itself, chances are that these are going to be better than whatever is in your amp sim that you bought. Or when you have a load box that comes with a couple of IRs, or an analog speaker simulation, which is often just a filter curve. If you can replace that with an actual good IR, night and day difference. And this is what I'm going to show you now in a session that I've prepared. And I'm not going to show you this is bad and this is good, because that's very subjective. I'm just going to show you the drastic difference that you get by just choosing different cabs, and you can then make a decision for yourself. And maybe that inspires you to dive into this topic and actually go into the submenu and cycling through the different cab options, and then maybe getting an IR pack, which are really not expensive, and there are free ones out there as well. And going on a tone quest and figuring out your go-to IRs for different situations. And one reason for why I want to do this and help you with this is you're going to hear the massive differences in frequency response. So darker, brighter, more mid-rangey, harsh, fat, whatever. And once you realize that, then it makes a lot of sense to pick the right IR before you start tweaking with EQ when you mix. Because if you EQ guitars, you can mess up all kinds of things. I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm EQing things all the time, of course. But if you can get closer by just picking the right stuff at the source, including the IR, and especially the IR or a real cab, then you don't have to tweak as much with EQ, which will result in a much bigger, better guitar sound at the end that sounds less processed, that has less phase issues, that has clearer transients and all of that, and where the internal harmonic balance of the guitar is still intact because you're not tweaking it with EQ like crazy. You still have the right relationship between fundamentals and harmonics and all of that if you EQ less. And you simply choose the right IR that fits the song and the style you're going for, and you'll find yourself having to EQ much less, and everything's going to be better. That's the main reason for why I want to show you this. Okay, so let's see if this actually works as intended. I am going to share my screen, entire screen. So there's two little clips here. One is a bass DI, one is a guitar DI. And what I've done is, so both are clean DIs. What I've done is on the bass DI, there is a classic Ampeg VST head. Everything's flat here in terms of EQ. And this is a simulation, of course, an Ampeg simulation. And then here, if you click that effects rack button at the top here, this additional control surface pops up. And here, you can go through different cabs. And you see the type of cab, and you see the microphone or microphones that are being used right next to it. So it's an IR, which is a snapshot, a capture of the mic, of the cab and the mic, and then any EQ or processing afterwards, whatever they did to capture it. And so I don't know if these are like IRs or if there's some algorithm in this case, whatever, but they give you these options. So this is one thing we can go through and just compare the differences. And for the guitar track down here, I have two instances of a guitar plugin. It's a modded Marshall amp thing. Just a standard kind of rock tone, not heavily distorted, just a little bit. And then in here in the cabinet module, you have the built-in cabs where you can move mics and select mics up here. But then you can also turn these off and load external IRs instead. So we're going to try that. And then we're also gonna try and use this plugin here, which is free, by the way, where you have a speaker and a mic, and you can move the mic around, and you can see the results in terms of frequency response. And you can not only go, like you can go further away, or like you can move the mic this way. You can also go in circles around it. You can tilt the mic, and you can change the distance. And it all results in a completely different curve. And we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But the main thing is the difference between the different caps and how much of a difference it makes without doing anything to the amp. So let's start with this here. So let's turn on the amp. And let's pick the first one here. I'm going to pick this one. This is an 8x10 with one mic in front of it. Okay, now let's switch to the same mic, same amp, but different cap. Now we go from an 8x10 to a 1x15. Now I'm going to switch back and forth. Let's start with the 8x10, and then I'm going to just switch to the 15 while it's playing. Pretty massive difference, right?
Yeah.
And so in this case, if I wanted a more mid-rangey tone, you would think like a 15 sounds like more low-end, sounds bigger, whatever. But like it's just one 15 and 8 10-inch speakers, so it's not as much low-end actually. But for some reason, I don't know which cab they used or where they put the mic, but like this combination of mic and cab just has much more mid-range and a little less low-end. This here has more low-end, sounds warmer, rounder, whatever. But if I was going for an aggressive mid-rangey tone, I would probably use this one. And if I were to go for a more low-end, bigger low-end, and a smoother, rounder tone, I would go for the 8x10. And I have to do much less EQ work because it is better for the song I'm going for right away. Now let's go to a 4x10. So I'm going to start with the 8x10, then I'm going to switch to the 115, and then I'm going to go to the 4x10. It's always the same mic, same amp. So the 4x10 is again closer to the 8x10 in terms of how it behaves in this case. So let's compare the 8 and the 4. So this 4x10, for whatever reason, has, to me at least, more top end. It's a little brighter. It has clearer attacks. It sounds a little more hi-fi, more expensive. So I have 3 really good tone options right here that I can choose from. And then all of the others as well. I just chose those ones now because it's the same mic, just a different cab, and I wanted to emphasize the difference of the cab. If I go for a different mic or a combination of mics and whatnot, you can have even more options. But just this was a really, really big difference to me. So, yeah. Anything to add to that, Manel? I think it's like we can let the examples speak for themselves, but...
Yeah, nothing really.
Yeah. Cool. Now, let's go to the... And just one thing, just so you know what a cab actually does. Like, if I do it without any cab... Or like, let's remove amp and cab altogether. So you can absolutely also play a bass just record a DI without any amp. It's just a different tone again. For bass, this can sometimes be an option, just so you know that the amp itself, just having an amp makes a difference, obviously. But you can also use a DI if that is a sound you prefer, because the amp will always give you a little bit of a low frequency roll off, and the cab more than anything does that. So if you look at an analyzer here, and I turn off the amp and the cab right now, like it's right now, you'll see that below 50, the very subs, you'll have some content there from the DI. It goes down very, very low. It's absolutely clean, flat, low end from just the bass. So there's quite a bit of frequency content way down there. Of course, you'll have the louder stuff in the first octave and all that. But like now if I turn on the amp and cab, it sounds fuller and bassier, but it's just more focused on that 100 hertz area, or between 50 and 100. The fundamentals are actually quieter, and there is a roll-off, so there's almost no sub-content below, 50, 40 hertz. Just because every cab has a roll-off. It only goes so low, and then it can't reproduce any frequencies anymore. And so, yeah, by just using a cab and an amp, you're getting this natural roll-off. If you want the biggest, fullest low end possible all the way down to the subs, and you want to boost that stuff or enhance it or whatever, then just the DI might be the better option for you, or mixing just the DI with the amp or something, just so you know what an amp and a cab actually does. Because a cab will look something like this when you look at the frequency curve. So a cab will have a low frequency roll-off and a high frequency roll-off at some point. It's not going to reproduce the very highs. It's not going to reproduce the very lows. It has a range, right? And without that, you get the full picture. That's why if you turn off the cab from a guitar amp and it's distorted, you get a super fizzy, ugly top end, because all of that stuff is all of a sudden there. That is being naturally filtered out by a cab. And this is also why some of the cab emulations are not really IRs or captures of real cab, but just EQ curves applied sometimes in some of the load boxes, for example, where they just apply filter, and that kind of gets close to how cab behaves, but not really, because the filters are just part of it, not the entire thing. Okay, let's go to the guitar here. We have this amp, this kind of Marshall style amp on this instance. Let's switch to the first instance here, this one. And let's switch to the cabinet section. So I'm going to compare this cab here. This is the what they call matching cab. So there's a couple of cabs inside of this simulation here, and cab 3 is matching amp 3. So this is the one that's supposed to work good with this one. So let's just start with that. It's all flat. It's the default mic setting here at the edge of close to the edge of the dust cap, like good starting position for a mic. I didn't change anything. It's just default matching cab. Now let's go through some of the others. Like, that is just massive. It's completely different. Yeah. It's completely different. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just very different. Now let's stick with the matching cab. Let's compare this to what I said, the Mesa 4x12. This is an IR of the Mesa 4x12 that I had. I'm getting a few clicks in the audio. I don't know if you hear those too.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that is our podcast software, but it still gets the point across. So again, I'm going to go from this to this, matching cap versus Mesa IR. I just love the fullness of this, but it totally depends on the song, the context, and everything. So it's very different. And now let's turn on the orange 4x12. This has V12s in it, V30s in it. This has V30s in it. It's both 4x12, similar cap, still completely different. So it's two 4x12 caps, very high quality, pretty expensive, same speakers in it, good for similar types of music. I had both, and here's why I sometimes used one, sometimes the other. Right? It's like, but it's really interesting what you can do with that and how you can create different characters. And then you can also blend them. And the way you do it is with this particular plugin, you just click on this, you load from your computer, you load a folder with these IRs. And here's the same thing. And up here is just the built-in caps, and you can just blend between whatever's on the left side, in this case this one, or on the right side, in this case this one, or up there the built-in caps. And then you can also manipulate it. You can add more distance to the mic. You can angle it, whatever, with the built-in mics at least. There's a resonance parameter, which gives you the oomph and the sense of air being moved and all of that. So you can do so much with just the cap section that I sometimes find myself not even reaching for the amps anymore. Like I will do a little bit. I adjusted this a little bit here, made it a little bit brighter before this, but honestly, once I have a tone that I'm kind of happy with, I spend way more time in this section here, getting the mic position right, finding the right IR to begin with, and all these things. Because as you heard, it's such a big difference. Incredible difference. You can go from very thin and brittle to super thick and heavy to whatever just by swapping out the cap. It's insane. So, yeah. And then to show you one more thing you can do. And I don't know, Manel, have you often recorded cabs with microphones? Probably most of what you're doing is in the box, right?
Yeah, the most of it is in the box. Whenever I've done something with a real cab, I wasn't the person miking it. You know, there was someone else doing that for me, basically.
Yeah, which is fine. Yeah. So what you can see here with this plugin, it's called Miko 2. It's free, by the way. Just download that. There's a paid version of it too with much more cab options. So if you click this, you'll see they have all these different amps, these different cabs. In the free version, all you have is the Mesa 2x, they call it Mega, but it's Mesa 4x12 oversize, very popular cab again. But what's cool is you have you can add different mics and combine all of them. I don't know how many, like four mics. And you can combine all of them, or you can just use a single one. You can choose between a 57, a 421, a Royer 121 ribbon, a condenser. So you have all kinds of different options of mics. And as you can see, whenever I change anything, you see the frequency curve here that shows you what actually happens. And so what I want to show you is a couple of things. First of all, again, this is going to sound different compared to what we had before. So in this case, I turned off, let me just see, I switched to this here, but with no external IR selected. So we were hearing the amp just without a cab. So this is, by the way, what it sounds like. It's going to be ugly. And this is because all that stuff is in there, like I said, that's been filtered out by a cap normally. That's why it sounds so brittle and so fizzy. But I've deactivated the cap on the amp sim. And now instead of whatever is in here, I just bypass that entire thing. I just run the amp and I run it into this cap. Cool. So I want to turn it down a little bit. It seems to be a bit hot. So what I want to show you is look at the frequency curve and listen while I move this around the cap, because you think as long as the distance is the same from the center, you'd think a speaker will sound pretty much the same, right? Turns out it doesn't at all. If I move around this speaker here in a circle, see what happens up here. The sound changes drastically, and you're going to hear this as well. Just because even though the speaker is round, there's differences. There is certain spots in the back where the wires are glued to the speaker, where the magnet is attached to the speaker, where, it's just different things that make different spots on the speaker sound different. So it's not just what everyone's talking about, that the center is brighter than the outside. It's like this spot here is different from this spot. So let's listen to this and look at the graph at the same time. You get different resonances. The differences are now more nuanced compared to swapping out the cap, but you still get differences. And then if I go closer to the center of the cone versus like all the way to the dust cap, or all the way out there, that's going to be the biggest difference, of course. So. And then angle finally. And then also this side versus this side when you angle it. So yeah, all kinds of things you can do. I only want to show how that there is a difference and how big that difference is. That's my main goal for today. You be the judge of what is good for your song, what you like, what you don't like. But I hope that this is giving you an idea of how big of a difference the cab actually makes, and how important it is to switch cabs and experiment with that.
I have some questions.
Yeah.
For you. Because, we've seen that, we have too many options now. Like, you can move the microphone 2 centimeters and the sound will change. So I would like to simplify it a little bit more for myself and people like me. So, what would you say would be, I don't know, 3-4 standard setups in terms of cabs?
Yeah, great question. So I would say for most people, if you can, and if you want to record, let's skip the whole IR versus real cab thing. It doesn't matter if it's real or IR or anything else. But for most people, a 4x12 would be a great starting point and a great thing to have. I think that's also why this Miko plugin gives you the Mesa oversized cab, because that and the 57, it's very rare that this wouldn't work. It's just a very, very good cab and a standard mic. And so a 4x12 Mesa is, I would say, for good reason, one of the most recorded guitar cabs in the studio, and a great starting point for most people. If you want to have a couple of go-tos to cover different things, I would say go with a 4x12, maybe a Mesa, shoot it out against whatever in orange, whether or not you prefer that. It's different, like you heard, but both could work. But one of those, like the big V30 type 4x12s, and then have something like a Marshall cab as an alternative, which is always going to be, it will have more bite. When I compared my Mesa IR to the matched cab of the amp sim, you heard that my Mesa thing was like fuller, bigger, and kind of the matched cab thing was brighter and had more bite. And it's not better or worse, it's just different. And so as an option, I would have a classic Marshall cab. I think the cab that sold the most units by far is the 1960 lead, whatever it's called, Marshall. There's different versions of that. I always get it wrong, but you know the one that the classic tilted black Marshall cab. That one of those as a brighter option. And again, the guitar nerds will like come at me. There are differences. I know there are different speakers in those, and then you can have greenbacks or the whatever. What are they called? GT75s. You know. They call it like that. I'm making a fool. G12T75. Damn, or GT75 and all these different options. But the classic, Marshall speakers, Celestions. There are nuances and difference between them. Yes, but in general, a Marshall cab will to me sound brighter and have more bite in the upper mid-range compared to like a Mesa 4x12. And then maybe you want to have one smaller option like a 2x12 or a 1x12 for certain tones, just because not always everything has to be super big. Sometimes the guitar fits better in the arrangement. If it's a little more narrow, mid-rangey to begin with, you have to filter less, you have less rumble. Maybe you don't even need that stuff. Maybe if it's about, like I said, a punchy, clean, or slightly crunchy funk guitar, maybe a 1x12 is awesome because you don't get a bunch of low-end stuff that you have to roll off. Maybe the transients are clearer. So yeah, that would be what I would recommend. I would recommend a bright cab, a full fat sounding cab, and then something precise and small, and you'll be good to go. And then if you're into like clean, really clean stuff, I would just get a good emulation or the real thing of something like a Roland Jazz Chorus or a Fender Twin Reverb with just the built-in cabs, and that because that thing just sounds awesome the way it is, the combo amp, right? For like really clean stuff. But that will cover a lot of bases. And so, yeah, that's my recommendation.
Okay, and if someone wants to start recording their guitars at home with microphones, which would be like a pretty normal option of, a microphone you would choose to record your cab?
To this day, I still think people should start with an SM57. Just because it has always worked and it still works. It's a classic choice for good reason. There are many other options as well, but a classic 57 is affordable, is a great mic. You've heard it on tons of records across all genres. If you can't record a good player with a good amp and cab and guitar with a 57, it's definitely not the 57's fault. Like, that's not going to be the problem. So that... if you have a 58 already, an SM58, because it's your vocal mic that you sing into, just take the grill off and you have a 57. It's pretty much the same. It's the same capsule, same electronics, all that. You can just put that in front of an amp. You can use an SM7 if you have one, like the one that I'm talking into. So if you already have some sort of mic that is decent, try that if you like it. But if you get one, I would just still start with the 57. And then if there's anything you can't get out of that, try a few different options.
And is there any? Because like we've seen that you can place it wherever you want, basically. But is there any like starting point for placing your microphones?
Yes. In many cases where the dust cap meets the cone, so the dust cap in the middle, the small circle in the middle, where that meets the cone, this is kind of the sweet spot. It's also because that's why it was the default spot in the amp sim that I showed you. This is oftentimes the sweet spot because in the very center, it often is too bright and brittle. On the very outside of the speaker, it gets really dark and bassy. And somewhere in between, and usually somewhere where the cone meets the dust cap, is the sweet spot. And that's where I would start. And then I would first of all start by listening to the 4 speakers in your cab or the 2 speakers in your cab, because even if it's the same model, they will all sound different. So I would play very quietly, or have someone play or run something through it, and I would just put my ear on the speaker quietly again, and then listen to all 4 speakers, and you'll notice they are completely different. Then pick the one that sounds best to you, or the least noisy, or whatever. Then on that speaker, put a mic there at around where the dust cap meets the cone. You can use a flashlight or something if you can't see inside, or you can take the grill off the speaker, and then you move it around with the same distance to the center to find where this sweet spot sounds the best. And then after you've done that, you think, okay, do I want brighter or darker? And if you want it brighter, you go closer to the center. If you want it darker, you go closer to the outside. That's the order of operation. You start by picking the right cab as a whole, then the right speaker within the cab, then you put it where the dust cap meets the cone, and you can go around in a circle there, and then you go brighter or darker. And then once you've optimized all of that and you still think something's missing, you can put a second mic on the cab and combine the two. You can say, okay, I like it there, but I still want additional low end, so maybe put a second mic on the outside of the speaker cone and blend it in slightly to get more low end. So
yeah.
But yeah, I hope this made the whole cab thing more interesting and clear to you. I hope you can now you found some inspiration and you feel excited about trying different cab options that you have. And for those of you who have never opened those sub menus of the amp sims, maybe now it's time to do it and figure that stuff out. It is fun. It is fascinating, and it will save you so much work in the mix. And your rough mixes and your recordings will just sound so much better from the beginning if you do that right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've learned from this, and I should experiment more with different amps and cabs and stuff. So.
Have you been surprised about how big the difference sometimes was?
No.
Like you knew it.
I knew it, but I think I should be open to new tones,
Yeah, I get it. I stick with the same stuff also. It's not always bad if you already found something that is really good. Like the stuff you have is not. It's not that you have just chosen something because you don't know what you're doing. You are a great producer, and everything that you produce, like nobody would ever question your choice of cab and amp and all that. So once you know what you're doing and you've chosen something intentionally, there's nothing wrong with sticking to that. But many people are not even there yet. They haven't found their sound yet because they don't know why, and I totally get it. But even after a while, when you are used to using the same stuff again and again, and I've been there too, it might be worth experimenting and trying something new to keep it fresh, and to, I have to remind myself of that every once in a while too. For so long when I did heavy records, I was just always 5150 into Mesa cab, 57 in front of it, tube screamer in front of the whole chain, that's it. And it just works. It just works every single time, so why change it, basically? But every time I changed it and tried something else, I was like, oh, that's exciting. Something else, So,
yeah.
Anyway, cool. So, another long Benny monologue episode today. Sorry for that, Manel, for making you sit through these lately. But I want to get to more creative, production-focused episodes very soon, because those are always the ones where I can learn so much from you. So I hope we can get one of those in again very soon, have a conversation about these things. And yeah, for now, I think we can leave our audience with this. And if you completely disagree with anything that I just said, then please message us. Please leave a comment on YouTube. Please send us an email to podcast@theselfrecordingband.com. Correct me if I was wrong anywhere. And Also, if you have a go-to sort of thing that I should have mentioned, or maybe you know of something that is super popular and I just didn't know about it or whatever, or maybe you discovered something unique that absolutely works super well, let us know as well. We'll do a shout out. We'll let people know about it and share your insights with the audience. We can always learn from each other. So if you're listening to this and you have more to add to this, let us know. As always, we appreciate your feedback. And if you want to go on a tone quest together and have someone who can guide you through all these things, who can show you the right tools or get the most out of the tools you already have, who can give you feedback about whether or not the tone actually fits your arrangements and what to do with it in the mix then and all of those things, please go to the selfrecordingband.com and just apply for coaching, because we can help you with all of those things. And we can help you make good decisions here. We can help you learn the ins and outs of all of this and then make it work in the mix, of course. And also, very important, define your sonic identity and your identity as a self-recording artist, and then make it happen, make it come out of the speakers. I would love to see you there. Go to the selfrecordingband.com and apply for coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, do it.
Do it. Yeah, absolutely. And if you think you have all those things, but you need someone to get the best possible takes out of you, and like someone who says, screw the amps and the cabs and all of that, and just let's get it right with you playing properly, and let's write some good songs and riffs for you and all of that, go to Manel's website, honestly, because that is, Manel can get you from cell phone demo to finished production, and you don't even have to worry about these things, because you just have to show up, write and finish the song together with him, perform, let Manel guide you through the process, let him handle the technical stuff, and I promise you the result will blow you away. I've heard it a couple of times. So if you're looking for the creative input for someone who gets the most out of you as an artist, go to manelitomusica.com. He's amazing. And I would love to see more collaborations that come from this.
Yeah, and I promise that the process will be organized, but enjoyable.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, absolutely organized and super professional too. It's like,
Important.
yeah, but enjoyable. And this is important. Yeah. All right, enough for today. Thank you, Manel, for being here with me as always. Thank you guys for listening. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.